from the Mac, from my Mac.
Oh, there's no mic on that wire?
No.
Oh, okay, I gotcha. All right,
So,
go ahead, count back from 5 for me again.
Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Yeah, it's a little roomy, but you're loud and clear, so we should be good.
Okay.
Oh, wait, I have to.
All right. Ready to rock and roll?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that I'm streaming on YouTube, and I just want to make sure that's not double. It's not double doing like it does on Facebook. Remember how on Facebook sometimes it like double echoes?
There is a little echo.
Yeah, count back again.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
No, not hearing any echo.
Okay. We're
good. And
you just message me if you hear something.
Okay, and I've got the female voice for your open. That's the correct one, correct?
Yes, please. The other one really was very robot-y. So anyway.
Okay.
Here we are.
Gotcha. All right. 2 breaks today or 3, or what are we doing?
1 break. Let's just make sure I can see you in the chat.
Yeah.
Because
Do you see the test?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay.
All right. Then without further ado, let's have a fantastic show. Here we go.
Okay. Thanks.
Is being brought to you on the Voice America Empowerment Channel. For more information about our network and to check out additional show hosts and topics of interest, please visit voiceamericaempowerment.com. The Voice America Talk Radio Network is the worldwide leader in live internet talk radio. Visit voiceamerica.com. The views and ideas expressed on the following program are strictly those of the host or guests and do not necessarily reflect the views and ideas held by the Voice America Talk Radio Network, its staff, and management.
Welcome to Habits for Happiness with Lady Fuller. The path to happiness is paved with healthy habits. We spend much of our lives searching for happiness when the key we're looking for is right there inside of us. We can discover that key through habit change, which you're about to learn about. Now, here is your host, Lady Fuller.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Habits for Happiness, the show where we discuss habits you can employ in your daily life to make you happier. Today, joining us is Jamie Lerner, co-author of the book, The Ever-Loving Essence of You. Welcome, Jamie.
Hello. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, it's so nice to have you here. Let me introduce you, your beautiful self, to everyone. So Jamie, as I said, is the co-author of the book, The Ever-Loving Essence of You. You can put a fresh spin on just about anything that anyone throws her way. Jamie's unique and masterful ability to reframe one of my favorite topics, even the most difficult situations, is astounding. All of a sudden, your biggest becomes your greatest pleasure as she lovingly helps you sift through the contrast and find that small opening of light that quickly becomes your greatest jumping off point for clarity. This is amazing, Jamie. And just in closing, she never positions herself as the expert of anything, love that, and is always reminding you that it is you who knows best for yourself always. Oh, that's so beautiful. Thank you for being here today. And Jamie's going to talk to us habits for today, habit of positive self-talk. So Jamie, why did you choose this habit? Tell us about positive.
I believe that the quality of our life is really dependent on the quality of our thoughts. And I believe that the quality of our thoughts come from the quality of the relationship that we're having with ourselves, creating and recreating. So that is really powerful. And we have that power to consciously create a relationship with ourselves and direct those positive thoughts that we have about ourselves towards everything that we do. And I think that's what creates happiness.
Well, tell us about the path. So as we were talking about, to step back for a second, a lot, as a coach, I would say 50% plus, as I was telling you before the show started, of my clients come to me for overthinking, right? So there's a lot of negative self-talk going on, not positive self-talk, and bridging this gap between silencing or, being able to have some reframing around the negative voice in our head, and then and really strengthening the muscle of the positive voice in our head is something that I think everyone listening and lots of my clients would benefit from hearing about. But tell us about the journey for you. How did you get here to a place where positive self-talk became the choice du jour for you as a habit?
I was born with a knowing, I think we all are. And I think that the contrast of life, we move further and further away from our authentic selves. However, I did not. I have only heard my own voice. I had a connection, very strong connection with myself and not with my mom. So the ability to be very tuned into myself and to hear my own voice at all times was pretty much my lifeline. And so I have practiced myself to only hearing that voice, and my ability to direct myself at all times, which in many ways has become my superpower. I do think, though, that because we are trained to look outside of ourselves for everything, that we forget about the connection that we have with ourselves. We tend to tune out our own voice, our own inner knowing, our own ability to direct ourselves from the inside out. And then we tend to navigate from what we've heard others tell us about ourselves, even if it's true or it's not true. So I ask people to kind of fact check what they're hearing themselves say to themselves. And a lot of us really have to sit down and think about that because we're on automatic pilot. We're just reciting what has been told to us, not really even asking ourselves, is this true in our now, our right here now? So when people become lovingly curious about themselves and are able to just take a few minutes, probably first thing in the morning is the best time to do that, and tune into the things that they're saying to themselves about themselves, you will have to laugh because nobody talks to you. Nobody talks to someone else the way that people talk to themselves.
Yeah. They often say, like, if you met the voice in your head on the street, you would be like,
mortified. You'd be mortified. You would be
the other way. You'd be mortified. You definitely wouldn't be friends with that person, right?
Well, no.
You wouldn't be inviting them for coffee.
No, but and then when you hear that and you understand what that is, you have to laugh because it is really ridiculous. It's silly. It's not relevant at all. And it probably has nothing to do with where you are in your life right now and where you're wanting to go. So
so many questions. The first is, you talk about as a child, you were able to hear this inner voice. And was there a reason you said that mom wasn't around, or you were?
No, she was around, but and I spent half my life trying to figure this out. She was unable to have a connection with herself. And so although we had an amazing childhood, our house was just, fantastical in every way. And my mom loved me, but she was not able, we were not connected. So because of that, I was very tuned in to me, and have been that way pretty much my whole life.
That's
for
amazing.
better or worse, I was certainly a handful as a child. But it turned out okay.
No, totally. And when you talk about not having a connection with her, what are you specifically meaning? Just so for listeners can understand.
There was no emotional connection.
Okay.
So the emotional connection that I believe that most people, if they're lucky enough to have with the person that brought them into this world, I feel that we look to that person to direct us and to guide us and to reassure us. And that was absent. So it was very perplexing. But once again, my own voice was so very clear to me that was it. And that was a good thing. And she and my parents were very permissive in allowing us to find our way, and they were very supportive and whatever we needed to do. They didn't even really need to understand it. So on some level, intuitively, and there were 5 of us, I believe that my mom kind of knew that she wasn't equipped. Not consciously, but unconsciously. So the kind of parenting I received growing up, and thankfully, was there wasn't much to push against, which was wonderful. So we learned to trust ourselves, know ourselves, and to guide ourselves, and that was a blessing.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, well, thank you so much for sharing.
Mm.
That was a very personal question, but I'm fascinated by our childhood because it's this idea of these survival mechanisms that we pick up, right? The survival mechanism that you picked up to hear your inner voice that becomes your gift. I mean, I think that's almost beautiful, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love that so much. And so talk to me for, on the practical side for listeners. So they're saying, okay, I hear you that positive self-talk definitely is going to be more helpful than this negative voice that's on repeat, in my head. If you could give us some practical advice, how to strengthen that muscle, for the average listener who's just, maybe beating themselves up morning, noon, and night, and it's an example.
So once again, the first thing in the morning, whatever morning time that is for you, some people don't wake up early, but whatever their morning time is, it could be noon. If you would sit quietly with yourself and just even find one thing that you appreciate about yourself, just one. And I say one, that sounds easy, but it's difficult for people to think about something, not that they're appreciated for, but that they actually appreciate about themselves. That's like a really good place to start, period. And then to start listening for what your inner voice is talking about. Because I think we're completely unaware. And we're not sure if we actually feel the way that we're talking about ourselves, or once again, we've just dragged this vibrationally from wherever. It doesn't even matter where or when. And we've rehearsed it so much that it's just become part of who we are. So that is a good place to start. I like to think of it as just being lovingly curious about yourself for yourself.
I love this. And I'm just stuck on these words that you said. We're dragging these negative self-talk, dragging vibrationally from somewhere else. That's a paraphrase, but tell us about that. Why are we dragging around negative thoughts about ourselves from other places in our life? Why are we doing that?
Because in some ways they've become unconscious beliefs and we're unaware. We're just completely unaware that we have a choice to fact check, to check in with ourselves and to ask ourselves, in this moment, are these things that I'm thinking about myself and saying about myself, are they true? I don't think any of us have really asked that question. We've just assumed because someone told it, it is true. So that's a really good question to ask, even if you don't have the answer, just to be able to ask it. And then if you are going to look back, family of origin or wherever you think that may have come from, if you would look back at it from your right here adult now perspective, because it will look and feel very different. We're not small and vulnerable anymore. We're grown-ups and we have created lives for ourselves. And for many that have very little to do with where we came from. But we have not stopped to consciously unpack all of that, those items that we no longer need in our here and now life. So it's kind of revisiting in such a way that allows us to go from like 2 check-in bags to just a little carry-on bag. And then to begin to like soften the tone of some of these things that may have resonated with us and may be partially true, but all of that we end up beating ourselves up about, it doesn't fit with where we are now.
Yeah. And would you say that the majority of the vibrational luggage that we're carrying around is from childhood?
I believe it's from our past. So yes, and it doesn't have to be from family of origin, but think about all the people we're in contact with when we were young, teachers and,
Yeah.
whoever, friends and, friends' parents and all the people that have said whatever they've said about us, either to us or to someone else when we've heard that. And we just need, or we don't need to, but we can kind of begin to sift through some of that content and
Mhm.
consciously figure out if it fits in with our life right now.
Yeah. I would say, well, thank you so much for sharing. I love this topic so much. I talk about it with her all day. This is what I do in coaching business, is unpacking challenging beliefs. That's what I call it. And so it's just still unpacking my life, but it's like you're running old software. And you're running old software from, like, in a lot of cases for me, I had trauma when I was 9. So the running software from my 9-year-old self, but I'm walking around as a 46-year-old person. And that's almost sort of dangerous, right? That like a 9-year-old would be operating a 46-year-old subconscious. And so this work is about upgrading to my mature, or more mature self, so that I'm fully embodying who I am today, not who I could have was then. Is that what I hear you saying?
Yes, and I don't think it's dangerous, but it's not necessary.
Okay. Yeah.
So, and then
Good
the other
reframe.
thing is, well, the other thing is too, even if you figure all this out and acknowledge what you're doing, then you still have a choice what you want to do with it. It's the piece of not being conscious about what's happening. I think that's unfortunate because that's where our life stops. And we cannot really have forward momentum in creating what we're wanting for ourselves unless we have awareness. But awareness does not mean we have to do anything about it. It just gives us a choice. And that's the most important part of all of this work, is to become aware and to make a personal conscious choice about what the next step is. Because that is so powerful. We have so much power.
We have so much power.
Yes, we do.
We do. And, it's funny you talk about awareness. I mean, it is the first step of change. I went to a beautiful place called the Hoffman Process. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of it, but it's a place in Northern California where they talk about change work. And it's a grandchild of EST. And awareness is, they in like day 2 of the 7 days that you spend there, they bring out this big wheel and they say, awareness is the top. It's the first step in change. And I always laugh about that one because, I gave up drinking maybe, I think 5.5 years, almost 6 years ago now. Mm-hmm. And I knew for about 5 or so years before that I really wanted to quit drinking. And I was aware of the issue, but I hadn't made any changes or decisions about it. And so I was in what I call awareness hell. So there is that step awareness decision with of a limbo. So listening, and you might be aware of beliefs or behaviors that is your body telling you, it's time to make some sort of a decision, at least in my experience.
Well, and that's a good thing about our inner being, inner knowing. It's on call 24/7. It is never going to stop trying to get your attention, and it will never abandon you. It will never give up on you. And then when you're ready, and even if you're never ready, it is like always there for you. So yeah, you are your own best resource.
I love that.
People haven't heard that too much, but you are your own expert for yourself.
You are your own best resource. You are your own expert for yourself. That is so beautiful. I have a friend, and he is waking up in the middle of the night, and he is thinking that conscious is waking up to tell him something. I said, well, maybe we're not listening during the day, then we're not able to hear our inner voice. And for those out there, I'm not saying this is the cause of everyone's sleep issues, but it can be that sometimes our subconscious will try to get our attention. It might not be in the middle of the night, but it might be in other ways, right? I don't know if that's been your experience.
Well, it's true. And once again, to recognize And then to make a choice about it. Like, yes, I'm hearing you, inner being tapping me on the shoulder, reminding me I'm not interested, but I'm hearing you, I'm not interested. And then make the choice, like, I'm not interested and I'm not listening, as opposed to believing that, you cannot be directed from the inside out. And that's intuition too. Intuition all day long. And we don't use it. And that is a great way to be guided from the inside out. We all are born with it. And
Oh, I have the chills like up and down my body. I love intuition. It's my own best friend. I use it a lot in my coaching business, and it drives the logical thinkers in my life bananas. But how does one, right, that might be listening, who wants to strengthen their intuition and has come to saying a positive thing about themselves when they're quiet in the morning, how are other ways that we as human beings can strengthen our intuition? Because if it is our greatest superpower, we need to like go to the spiritual gym and start lifting. How do we do that?
And everyone has probably many examples that they can recall, times when you just had a feeling about something, to do something differently than you normally do it, and you listened to your intuition, and then you found out later that it was a good thing you did, because otherwise you would maybe have been involved in an accident, whether it's, you're turning left or turning right, whatever. But I think to go back and to revisit those times when you did listen to yourself, because I've never heard anybody say, I wish I had not listened to myself. And you hear people all the time say, I wish I had listened to myself. So I think that we don't trust ourselves. And the reason we don't trust ourselves is because we don't remember all the times that we had a feeling to do something and we did it and we were right. So that's really helpful.
I never wish I didn't listen to myself.
I mean, you don't hear people say, I wish I didn't listen.
I wish
to myself.
I didn't. I'm sorry, that was a double negative. Sorry, reframe.
No. But
I wish I didn't listen to myself. I
don't hear people say that. But I hear people say all the time, I wish I had listened to myself, because I knew. I did know, but for some reason I didn't trust that I knew. So we do know for ourselves all the time, even though we don't know how or why we know for ourselves, not for another, for ourselves. The interesting thing is we believe we know for everybody else, and that is not true.
We are not responsible for others. This could be a whole show on that affirmation. I am not responsible for anyone else. And I don't know.
You're not.
And I don't know. Yeah. So what are some ways that we can be, because in my experience, my intuitive voice is a lot quieter, than my thinking voice. Like my prefrontal cortex is constantly tapping at me, sometimes about negative things, but my internal sort of intuition voice, which I believe lives in my heart, but this is just me, is much quieter. So what are the ways that you would recommend people are able to sort of make that transformation? In my experience, it's head to heart, but whatever that transformation is for them, so that they can turn up the volume on that intuition.
I think when we sit quietly with ourselves, I think it's really helpful. And when we turn off our television, I think it's also really helpful. And when we disengage from a lot of chaotic social distractions, I think that's really helpful. But I think the reason people engage in all of those things is to distract themselves from themselves. So, and that's okay. So the question is, how can you nourish and nurture yourself back into your connection? Because when we are connected to ourselves, we hear our intuitive voice very clearly. As a matter of fact, that's what guides us. And it's interesting because we have access to all kinds of infinite intelligence. It just comes because we're not in our head. So quieting ourselves is a form of self-care. I think is a really lovely thing to do for oneself.
Being quiet is a form of self-care, quieting ourselves. That is beautiful. I love that so much. And we are going to head to a break, but when we get back, I want to talk about how we were forced into what I'm going to call quietude. I don't even know if that's a word, during COVID, and how people could hear that voice in a time that they might not have, and how that could have transitioned us into this great, what we're calling awakening, where people are doing things that are a little bit outside of the norm. So just hang tight, everyone. We're going to head to a break. We're here with Jamie Lerner. It's been a beautiful conversation so far. So stick around to talk about these more macro issues when we return. Thanks, everyone.
All right, great job. We're all clear. Back in a couple minutes.
We're on here with YouTube, Jamie, and I'm just going to ask you some fun questions that have nothing to do with positive or negative self-talk.
Okay.
How about that?
Okay, sounds great.
Okay, the first one is, if I could grant you any superpower, which one would it be?
I don't know. I feel like I have all my superpowers. I do.
Okay, well then tell us about your
really do.
superpower.
You know, I'm super connected to myself. I love myself, and because I'm connected and I love myself, I love everybody else. And when I'm with people, I'm very present, and that is such a gift to myself and to other people. And I take personal responsibility for everything and let everybody off the hook, and that feels amazing. And I do what I love to do all day long. And I don't
Be sure
know.
you're not related to Byron Katie, because you
Yeah,
seem like her.
You know, I do. I feel very blessed in, and just having this amazing connection with myself. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So you've already gotten your superpower. You might be the only person who's ever been on the show that said that. So amazing. It's totally awesome. And okay, so country, if you could travel to, resources unlimited tomorrow, what would it be?
Well, right now, nowhere.
Ooh, I like these answers. How about you would speak?
I'm sorry.
About how a foreign language would speak?
Oh, I think I'd like to speak French. Yeah.
It's a beautiful
Like
language,
it's
isn't
a
it? It's
beautiful,
very
romantic
romantic.
language. Yes.
And then when you're ready, Paris, and just, offer all the, speak in French to everyone.
Yeah.
Amazing. So something you want to do in your life that you haven't yet?
Be a California resident for more than a few months. I was a California resident, but only for a few months. So now I would like to be a permanent California resident. Yes, that is yes.
Yes, it is. I lived in California for 12 years. I lived in the San Francisco area and started a business there and went to business school there. And California is a beautiful state that everyone should live in at some point. That's like, feel like I'm starting to remember the Billy Joel song that he did. And
Yes.
it's like, don't live in New York, the East Coast, to paraphrase it, before you get too hard, and don't live in California too long and get too soft, but live in both places. It's a good dichotomy. Yes.
All right, we're coming back. Here we go.
Okay.
You are listening to Habits for Happiness. To reach the show today, call into 1-888-346-9141. That's 1-888-346-9141. Now, back to our program, and here again is Lady Fuller.
And we're back, everyone. Thanks so much for hanging in there with Jamie Lerner, talking about the beautiful habit of positive self-talk. Welcome again.
Thank you.
Right before break, we were talking about this concept of being quiet and listening to our inner voice. That is our superpower. And it just struck me as you were saying that, this idea that, so in our busy, busy, busy world, I mean, this stat I'm sure you've heard, but we make more decisions in one day than 100 years ago, people in lifetime, that our busy world, in 2020 or early 20 came to a screeching halt as we stopped and had a 2-year or so break. For me, it was a break. It was a lovely break. But for many, it's like you're running. We were all Forrest Gump, running, and then you stop. And how that sort of forced or circumstance of quietude affected us as people, because now we're seeing sort of this great resignation, people transferring jobs, people moving to places, a lot of moving, people exploring things they might not have. In your experience, what did COVID do for us being connected, hearing our inner voices?
I think it's been different for many people. I think the universe sat us down and gave us an opportunity to definitely be with ourselves and reconnect with ourselves. But I think for some people that was very difficult. And unfortunately, the substance abuse right now is really high because I think it was very isolating for people who spent most of their life avoiding that connection with themselves, and couldn't really make use of the opportunity to hook themselves up with themselves in a way that wasn't unhealthy. So, and then for others, it's been amazing because they've completely reinvented themselves. They've discovered themselves. They've decided, that they are able now to be who they've always been. It really opened the door for people to move across the country and change jobs and do a lot of things that they did not give themselves permission to do before. And society didn't give anyone permission to leave a good job, So I think it's been different for a lot of people. And then it's been a wonderful opportunity to appreciate other people because we've been without contact for so long with people that there is such a renewed appreciation, I think, for having physical contact with people that we really took for granted, I think. Because we had access to it. However, we were all so busy that it didn't have much meaning. It didn't really serve a purpose. So I think it's across the board. It's been, it's kind of run the gamut of everything. And yet there's so much goodness to pull out of this time. Because for the first time in forever, we have all been in the same place at the same time.
Yeah. It was a connection, right?
Yes.
It was a global connection in that way.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's interesting because it did have different effects on different people, but I do love this concept that our subconscious sat us down collectively.
Yes. The whole world.
Yeah. We got a talking to.
Yes, and I think Mother Nature too. I mean, with all the natural disasters that were going on at that time too, I don't know. It was a very interesting period. And I know it's not over yet, but hopefully it's winding down a bit.
I think it's winding in my coaching practice and in myself, really in myself too. It's really a tender time because it's sort of like, I hate to equate it to war because obviously there are people in war and we weren't in war, and for the most part we were safe. But it's almost like you've been through some sort of shelling and you walk outside and everybody's just sort of like assessing the damage, right? It's like almost like we were surviving 2-year period and sort of coming out and trying to adapt to in many ways. Life does return to its old patterns, but we're not the same.
No.
And so I think there's a tenderness between, like, it's like we're a little bit on Bambi legs, and it's also a beautiful time because we can decide in this still in this tender moment, no matter if, it wasn't a good 2 years, it's a very tough 2 years for me, to still emerge from the rubble with a renewed sense of purpose. It's not too late to have that sort of reawakening, right? Because we're still kind of re-entering a new place. We haven't fully, as you said, it's winding down, but it isn't over. So it's just a tender time for people. So I think it's really important that people hear this message right now of being kind to ourselves.
Absolutely. Self-care is very important. And
very
kind to self translates into kind to others. When you're kind to yourself, you just naturally extend that to others.
Yeah.
So,
I tell my kids, I have talking to you before the break, you have 3 beautiful grown sons, and I have 2 children who are, 10 and 12, but they often come and tell me about, so-and-so wasn't nice or whatever. And I always say, it's like kind of, or being unkind is like a hot potato. No one really wants to hold it. So people throw it to each other, right? But it comes from self, right? If you're not being, and so if someone's unkind as a little person, it might be, who knows happening, but usually there's an unkindness offered to the person being unkind. And then they throw it around. But kindness can also be like a beautiful plush teddy bear that we throw to people. It's like we have this beautiful hearts inside of ourselves that we feel and reverberate with the vibration of kindness. And so we naturally extend it. It's a force, right? It's a vibrational energy that we give out.
And I think that when we are unkind to others, we are feeling unkind to ourselves. I think it is a direct reflection. How we treat others is a projection of how we're feeling about ourselves. So it is interesting when my children were little, and even now when they tell me about someone who is unkind, I remind them that that is a person that is feeling unkind to themselves, and maybe we could have compassion. And when you have compassion for someone else, that is a much better feeling than to be angry or to be hurt or to or anything, or to take that unkindness of someone else on. But it's a nice place to go when you experience the presence of someone who's unkind to you.
Yeah. So talk to us about cultivating compassion for others and ourselves. So in my case, I can, again, only speak for myself, but there's certain experiences I've had in life where people have done something to me and I've felt anger, right? And maybe not, who knows, who cares? But the point is that it's very tough for some of us to find compassion in that moment for the other person. So tell us about how we can strengthen that part of ourselves that leans to compassion versus resentment or anger as a sort of reaction.
So the question is, which feels better? Does it feel better to resent someone, or does it feel better to you to have compassion? Because at the end of the day, the most important thing is how you feel, you person, yourself. And the only person that has control over that is yourself. No one can make you feel anything, but we have complete control over what we're choosing to think about and how we're choosing to feel about what we're thinking. So, what feels better? And if you're choosing to be resentful, take responsibility for it. If you're choosing to punish yourself because you perceive somebody has punished you, that's a choice. Or if you're choosing to nourish and nurture yourself at a time where you feel you may have received somebody's feeling about their own self. It's never about the
It's
other.
amazing.
It's always about ours. No, I'm sorry. It's never.
Never.
And it's wonderful when you get to the point where you end up thanking people for being in your life. because they have been a wonderful opportunity for you to learn so much about yourself.
Yes. So something I often tell my coaching clients is everyone's a teacher. Our children, our partners, our workmates, the man on the street, everyone's a teacher, and they're here to teach us something until we get it down. And then, maybe the relationship releases or not. And it brings up two thoughts for me. The first is that Marcy Shimoff on the show, and she wrote a book called Happy for No Reason and Chicken Soup for the Women. And she talked about this wonderful idea of appointments, that sometimes we actually come across someone, even if it's just for like on the bus, right, who tells us something important for us to know. And our appointments can be short, and our appointments with these people in our lives can be quite long, like a marriage, right? But they're all here to mirror back to ourselves these lessons, right? And so there's gratitude for that.
Absolutely.
That's a reframe, right?
Yes. Yeah.
In and of itself. And then another thing that's coming up is next week we have Yogi Aaron on the show, and he talked a lot about this affirmation in his last show. That was affirmation of let all people that I can love and serve find me, and all the people that I no longer love and serve leave me, and may they find other people who they can love and serve. And it was sort of this idea of like all just walking each other home, and we don't all necessarily walk at the same times, and that's okay, and we're all just learning from each other, which softens the friction, I think, that we feel often in relationship, right?
Yes, that's beautiful. That's really beautiful.
Beautiful.
Yes.
It's like I've been saying it every morning. It's like it's just this amazing sort of like idea, like we're all just walking on this wonderful path, and sometimes it's a marathon, and sometimes walking with certain people, sometimes we're not, and it doesn't mean anything about the other people or us. No. Right? It's just what we need to know right now. Go ahead.
Although we attract all of it to ourselves with our thoughts. And so we are 100% responsible for attracting every single thing into our life, good and maybe things that we are not actually wanting. And we do that with our thoughts. So we're 100% in control, 100%. There are no victims, even though we live in this victim mentality society.
Yes.
We are not victims. We are incredibly powerful human beings that can consciously create amazing lives for ourselves, not for others, but for ourselves.
We're creators.
Yes, we are, for ourselves. People want to create for others. You cannot do that. You can create for yourselves and be the living, breathing example and inspire people, but we do not create for others.
Oh,
and that's tough for people to let go. They'd much rather create for someone else than for themselves.
Yeah, it brings up this idea too of legacy, right? So obviously our time on this earth is limited, and we're given this one precious life that we know of, maybe more, but we are creating while we're here. And as saying, we're creating for ourselves. We were creating because maybe to change the world, maybe we want to change ourselves, maybe we want to have a positive impact, but we are creating, as I hear you saying, for ourselves. And Liz Gilbert, who I love so much, has a wonderful podcast on her book Big Magic, and she talked about this idea of writing a letter from your great grandchildren after you're dead to yourself, and recognizing what you created and how you use your voice. And I thought that was so beautiful because it does sort of give us pause, right? We have this runway of time that we can create in, if that's what we choose to do. And how are we going to choose? And what are we going to choose to create?
And most people think about creating in terms of action and physical, but it's not. Creation is from within. Creation. What are you creating with yourself, for yourself?
Tell us more.
Most people want to leave a legacy of like money or buildings or, but what if you were so committed to creating such an incredible relationship with yourself that you were so comfortable in your own body that wherever you went, you were able to leave a positive impact on another because your presence would allow the other person to feel at ease. Wow. That
I have
seems
chills
amazing.
everywhere.
And that could be the legacy. And that would impact so many people all the time while you remain in such a good feeling state. So I call that the vibrational high life, which
vibrational high life. I love this so much. I know I read an Oprah article once where she was interviewing Eckhart Tolle, who is very present in the present moment for those people that may follow him. And she describes this very much what you're describing, that she was late and she flustered into the room and said, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I've totally ruined your schedule, I'm sure." And he just said to her, as peaceful as he could, he said, "I am enjoying sitting in this beautiful room, looking out the window, enjoying this beautiful day. And I'm so grateful." Yeah. And I was like, we can be more like him.
Yes. And yet it feels good. How about the reason to do it is all for you because it feels good. It feels good to be in your now.
And what would you say to those people who might be thinking while they're listening to this, well, if I only do things for me, is that selfish? What would you say to them?
I would say that people that nourish and nurture themselves first and foremost are more and most available for all others because you have so much to give. And I think it just kind of spills over into and onto other people just very naturally. It's just becomes the natural extension of where you are. You're full and you've given it to yourself. And there are so many people that are wishing and wanting other people to give them things. Give yourself all the things that you're wishing and wanting others to give you. If you can't give those things to yourself, you are unable to receive them from others. And
I have chills again.
It's
amazing.
It starts with us. It starts with us. People don't want to hear that, but it does. And it's a choice. So love yourself, know yourself. Yeah.
I love this idea. It's like you can't pour from an empty cup, right? So it's like cup runneth over. It sounds biblical, but this idea that like, if we fill our own selves with love is what I hear you saying, and you keep filling up your cup with love, like your own cup, I mean, to some degree has a limit. So it just pours over and everyone in your vibrational orbit, no matter where you are, is receiving that cup runneth over experience. I mean, Absolutely. That is truly, excuse my language, that's badass. That's amazing.
That is badass.
It's totally badass. And the thing is, it's free, right? So many of us think, oh, I need to, go, get on medication or try psychedelics and meditation. Medication for some people is the right thing, but I'm saying it's not about spending money on trying to be fixed. It's about, and I'm not saying any of that's bad, but it's about like tapping into this inner superpower that we could argue throughout this conversation we've identified as a more powerful force than anything outside of us. Any quick fix, any distraction, any, fix me now type of thing, that if we're able to tap into that, then we have this free sort of never ending resource while we're here on this planet.
Yes, we do.
I mean, why are there not billboards all over the world telling us this?
Because this society is, we are coming into an awakening, but that would be very dangerous if we did not seek out the self-help aisle in the bookstore, which I think is, I think we really know so much about what we need for ourselves, and we should consult ourselves often.
We should consult ourselves often. Yeah, we could like sit in our own therapy chairs, do some gestalt, sitting back and forth.
I don't think people really ask themselves the questions that they ask other people. And when they ask other people those questions, they're not really even listening to the answers. And when they're looking for something, for somebody to tell them the answer, they don't listen either. So, you're a great resource for yourself. Start there. Go there.
I love that so much. Go there, listen, all of these things. We could have a whole nother show on listening because nobody listens to anybody. They only wait to hear themselves talk again, right? It's like there's a book in me about listening and, as a superpower. But anyway, that's secondary to listening to ourselves, right? Listening to others. And people want to find more of you. Where do they look? Where can they find your book? Tell us more.
The book is on Amazon, and I have a website. It's www.jamie-lerner.com.
Amazing, amazing. And what do you want people to walk away from this conversation with? I have like so many data points going on in my brain, but give us the aha that people listening can really take back and to their lives and sit with and digest.
Well-being is your birthright. That's important to remember. Yeah. And trust yourself. Yeah.
Well-being is your birthright, and trust yourself.
Yeah.
Oh, Jamie, this has been such an amazing conversation. And I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours about our superpower and listening. You are a beautiful, beautiful soul. Shared this amazing concept with us today of self-talk, and even going a step further of knowing. I mean, I'm also thinking of like Iron Man, the movie, where he has like this like microchip in the middle of his chest. It's like we have amazing source inside of us.
We do.
It's just kind of our journey to be able to block out the noise and find the superpower, which has almost been inside of us. That sounds like a very bad roomie, but the idea is that it's like, it's right there for the taking.
And it will find you if you're quiet. It will find you. You just have to quiet yourself and allow. It will find you. Yeah.
So get quiet, everybody. And thank you, Jamie, for being on the show. And we've reached the end of the show. So please, guys, we can continue the conversation. Please message me or chat about it on my Facebook group at Habits for Happiness. And remember, everyone, the road to happiness is paved with healthy habits. Please listen next week for another riveting conversation on a powerful habit that can change your life. Thank you, Jamie. Thanks, listeners. Talk to you guys soon.
All right. Perfect. All clear.
Okay. Thank you. And thank you so much, Jamie.
Thank you for inviting